Welcome to the CFL Outsider, a short series of totally impartial hot takes, odd takes, and generally unconventional opinions on the CFL and Canadian football, with your host and presenter, Old Man Shouting at Clouds.
Hey kids, welcome back to another episode of the CFL Outsider. I remain, as always, your host, Old Man Shouting at Clouds. And a sneak preview for this season, joining me will be Trevor, co-hosting the show. We're doing something a little special here, but before we get into that, I also wanted to talk about something serious. Those of you who watched last year know I talked about the fact I'm fortunate enough to be husband of a woman I call the Goddess, and she takes part in a Rebel rally down in Southern California once a year, a 7-day thing that's very tough. Her partner Lisa, just in the last week or so, her partner Lisa's husband suddenly passed away. Natural causes, but Doug Tough, hell of a guy. He was just in his early 50s, made his living as a plumber, had a plumbing company, and did a lot of good work for us here at the house and that. But more important, he, along with the Rebel rally, he thought if Lisa was going to be down there, he'd go and volunteer, because he was also a big off-road type guy and that. And just the outpouring of sympathy from that whole crowd tells you what an incredible guy he was, and frankly, how much he'll be missed. So this is just, I want to pass on my condolences to Lisa and the rest of her family and acknowledge that we've lost one of the good ones. That's about all I can say on it.
That's tough. That's a young age for sure.
It is, and it throws a loop into everything. Luckily for Lisa, if there's one good thing, this whole Rebel rally thing becomes very much a family, and they've rallied around her.
It's important to have at those times.
Yes, it is. But I don't want to keep bringing down the show. One other thing before we get into the meat of this, I do have a little bit of a rant.
I'm shocked.
Well, maybe.
I'm shocked, utterly shocked.
I go figure. No, the CFL Combine was on back at the end of March, early April. I can't remember even because I didn't get to see it. And this is what I'm concerned about. I know they talk about the fact it doesn't justify putting out hundreds of thousands of dollars to send the cameras out to wherever the Combine is, that they only get a few thousand viewers when they broadcast it. But the thing is, it's like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come. If you're not putting it out there, nobody gets a chance to see it. And I understand the CFL, we're not seeing the stars of next year. We're seeing stars 2-3 years down the road by the time they develop. So it's hard to get excited and put names around those. But if you don't do it, it's a lot harder to build the league. So my advice to our new commissioner, Mr. Johnson, next year when the Combine comes around, don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars rolling out a bunch of camera trucks and doing the old way, the production way. Send out Dwayne Ford and maybe Marshall Ferguson and an intern with a router and some other interns with just cameras and film it that way. Do it streaming the way that everybody's getting used to seeing right now. You can do that a lot cheaper. You get it on there. And then on top of that, you reach out to 2, 3, 4 influencers in the same generation, the same age as the players at the Combine. People that aren't necessarily football connected or only tangentially so. You bring them in, you get them to do some of the hosting and to put it out on their platforms. It grows the league in the younger numbers where we want to see them. It's a cheap way to do it, and it lets people see what's going on out there. So don't be scared off by money. Think of creative ways to do this.
Make this a combine for broadcasters as well. Why not put, like you said, interns, just send them down there with minimal equipment and see if they can get the foothold in the broadcast career covering the Combine.
Yeah, I like that. That's an even better idea. Do it purposely downscale. Make it look less professional, more of the flash and glitz that they like to do with the influencers. And I think it'd be a good way to maybe roll some people out there.
I think so. I like that.
Thank you.
So this episode is about the CFL Free Agency, and I'm going to say CFL signings as well. We could kind of cover some of that. But just a question before we get started. How do you feel about free agency in the CFL? Like, do you enjoy it?
I do. There's enough movement just because of the 1-year contracts and whatnot that it's always interesting to see.
Now, do you think free agency is good for the CFL?
I think overall it is. I would like to see longer contracts just so people stay in with a team longer and you build more of a fan base. But no, I think free agency is good. It's one of the reasons that the league stays usually with the parity that it does. If you have a good free agency in this league, you can move several rungs up the ladder.
Yeah, rebuilding isn't really a thing with one-year contracts. Do you think a minimum 2-year contract would be a good thing for the CFL?
I think that overall, yeah. I think maybe you want to do something like put a limit on it. Say if you're a 8 or 9 year veteran, now you're allowed to sign 1-year contracts because you're down towards the end of the career like that.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Yeah.
But I think in general, longer contracts, I think, getting them. I don't want to see the players underpaid, but the idea of the rookies coming in on a 3-year deal is good at least. They should just, as they're getting better, if they're worth more, they should find a way to compensate them during that time. I think overall it's a good thing. I also think that right now we pretty much know what the teams are going to be because we do have the draft coming up. But like I said, in the CFL, you don't draft somebody to start this year. Starter later in the year, you're lucky.
Yeah.
So what we have on paper is what we have on paper, and we can start talking about maybe where it goes.
Okay, and before we've both looked at the free agency, I mean, everybody's looked at it, the player movement, the signings. Let's just kind of go through the league and just see where you think each team is going to finish in their division. Don't give me their actual record, but just place them in the standings and just see what you think of. Not a power ranking, just win-loss ranking.
Sure. Well, let's do it this way. Let's go through the teams maybe alphabetically by team name. And at the end of it, once we've talked about it, I'll tell you where, but not in division. Let me do the whole 9 from 1 to 9.
Okay.
Where they're going to finish up. So if we did that, we would be starting with the Alouettes. Now, this whole idea was your show, so do you want to tell the folks what kind of movement we've had? So
I just want to say we'll start with the Alouettes. And they, so the CFL.ca gave them a B, a grade of a B on their movement, and just some high level things. And you can just tell me what you think of these. So quarterback Davis Alexander has been anointed their starter because of the movement of Cody Fajardo. I just want your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. He looked very good in 4 games last year. That's a small sample size. I'm going to say he's probably ready because Moss is a good quarterbacks coach. And if he's saying he thinks he's ready, then I think he is. I think there will be a couple of losses in there this year because of mistakes from him. But overall, I think it's a good move, especially bringing in basically swapping quarterbacks with backups with Edmonton and bringing in Bethel Thompson.
That was my next thing. So it's a great backup plan, Bethel Thompson. Also, I would agree with you about the coach Moss. He has seen a lot of great quarterbacks. He's coached a lot of great quarterbacks. He knows what a great quarterback looks like. Yeah.
And the fact that he was willing to pull the trigger that quickly on Alexander says good things to me. So I think that was a fairly significant move for them. Not really a pickup because they already had him there. Other than that, they've also held their team together fairly well. They didn't see a lot of movement in the whole free agency thing, or at least it doesn't look like they saw movement from people they were trying to keep. The only significant one I saw was Stubblefield going to
Yes. Well, and also Julian Grant.
Yeah, he went off to Edmonton, didn't he? Trying to think, but yeah, it's significant, but somewhat less so because he has been injured for the last at least 2, maybe 3 seasons for a good chunk of the season. So there's always that issue that if you can't stay on the field.
Holding a team together, they had a great record, a good team regular season. So holding that team together is probably as important as other weaker teams players.
I think, and there's going to be, I think, some controversy in this, and some people are going to say that I'm a Saskatchewan fan for some reason, which Oldman definitely is not. He's impartial. But for
your background wouldn't suggest that, by the way.
No, but that's to get people off guard. No, I'm putting them over 1 to 9. They're going to have the second best record in the league this year.
Second best.
Yeah, they may be the best team in the league, but the Eastern Division's a lot tougher than the Western Division this year, so they'll be playing tougher opponents.
So are they going to be the first place in the East then? Is that your...
Yeah.
First place. And I would agree with that. They had a great team last year, kind of had a tough matchup in the playoffs, but they had a good team. So the next team we're going to hit here is the Argos. And CFL.ca gave them, I'm just looking for the grade, gave them a B-. So a couple of notable things. They brought back linebacker McManus. Your thoughts on that?
Definitely a good move, depending. I haven't seen what the pricing was on him. He is probably the best linebacker in the league right now. Definitely the best at the MAC position where they've been running him lately. I think it was worth it. The only thing that I question is their overall scheme seems to be to pay a lot of money to him and to Kelly and then let a bunch of other people go.
Yes.
So the significant thing for them was they lost their entire defensive line.
Exactly. Jake, the next one I was going to mention, the loss of Jake Seresna. He's a big loss, eh?
Yes, he is. But they also, they lost Robbie Smith out on the end, I think he's the highest paid defensive player now. Edmonton made him that, and he's a good Canadian defensive end. And trying to think who else, the Brinkman that Edmonton took.
Yes.
So Edmonton took 3 of them, and then Calgary got Farin Omerladi, who I struggle with his name, got him back and signed him to an extension. So they're completely off of they're on all backups now. They've done a really good job of bringing in people, but can they do it again is the only question with it.
And did they win that Grey Cup with their defense or their offense?
I would say mostly with the defense.
Yes.
And that defense has now been somewhat decimated. Plus, they're losing people on the offensive line, and maybe they've got the replacements for them. I'm not sure, but, they lost. McKellar also went off to Edmonton there. They haven't re-signed Cage. I think they lost one other O-lineman, too. I'm just trying to run through what I've got here.
McKellar?
Yeah, I saw McKellar. I thought there was one other that maybe I was wrong. I thought they lost Landon. Yeah, Landon Rice. It looks like they just didn't make an effort to re-sign him.
Yeah.
He's gone, but I must have been thinking about someone else. I thought Calgary picked up one of their O-linemen, too, but I don't.
Then the loss of Royce Mechie. What are your thoughts on that?
That could be significant. He's been a big part of that defense. Plus, don't forget, they're now running. They kept Kevin Iben, and they've brought in Shivers for who was with Saskatchewan and then Edmonton, and they're co-defensive coordinating again. So can they get a bunch of stuff out of what they've got? Because what they've brought in and free agency are basically retreads. They got Robertson and Lanier out of Saskatchewan, and by the end of the year last year, Lanier was a healthy scratch, and they're doing a lot of that. It seems like they're bringing in lower level players. How that will turn out for them, I don't know.
And the re-signing of Nick Arbuckle, who's old in quarterback years, MOP in the Grey Cup, does that influence the way Chad Kelly plays?
I don't think so.
No.
I think Kelly plays the way that he plays. He's always a very aggressive player. He wants the ball in his hands. I sometimes think somewhat to the detriment of his team. Once they're down inside the 5, he's carrying it in himself. That it's just a matter of where do you stop them with it. He is a gunslinger. He'll open up and try the long stuff, and it works enough for him. So if he stays healthy, they've got one of the better quarterbacks in the league. If not, it's looking a little thin there. But again, Arbuckle has been around Dinwiddie for a long time.
Yeah.
And
He clearly is a guy who can get it done when the pressure's on.
Well, he hasn't been in the past. He has once, and so we'll give him credit for that. But
he has once. And what's their record? Like, where are you placing this team for the season?
I'm putting them at 4th overall.
4th overall, and in their division?
Yeah. In their division, they'll be, I'm going to say 3rd. It's going to be very close for 2nd and 3rd. I think they may end up with a tied record, but Toronto getting the lower one due to a loss. We'll see.
Okay, I'm agreeing with that. Okay, so the next team is the Bombers.
Yes.
And I just want to give you the grade that they're getting on CFL.ca here before you start. So they are getting a C+.
Yeah. CFL.ca seems to be grading these people pretty easy.
So Adam Bighill, he's gone. No more. Is that a big loss?
Not so much because of the fact that is it Tony Jones they brought in, who's doing a really good job, and Bighill was getting up there in age.
And he did not play a lot last year either, right?
Yeah, he's a definite leader, but again, he was getting more injured and getting up there. The other one, which may be even more significant in that defense, is they didn't bring Brandon Alexander back either.
Yes, that's gonna.
Yeah, and you don't often play an American at safety, and he was so good at it, they were doing it for quite a bit. But they didn't like I said, they didn't, both those guys were getting older. And I think Alexander had lost a step. So that maybe makes some sense that they had to go towards there.
The re-signing of maybe the best offensive lineman in the league.
I think that was good. I think that I think he was the best offensive lineman in the league. I don't think he is anymore. I think the age
lineman.
Or offensive lineman, you're right. I think age is starting to catch up with him right now. He's the, I believe he's the oldest non-kicker playing in the league right now.
Wow, okay.
Apparently he's a month older than Trevor Harris. So that gets him the active non-kicker. But he's good. I'm more concerned about sort of the rest of the line. They gave up Liam Dobson at right guard. I think he went over to Hamilton. At left guard, he went over to Hamilton. They'd given up Oshie last year to Saskatchewan, and that O-line has been basically the bully boys. If whatever the offense does has started with that line, and I don't know if they're going to be able to keep that up.
The offensive line is it is so critical to the success of any offense. Without that, all the they call them skill players, they don't matter if you can't have an offensive line in front of that.
Exactly.
And it's strange that those guys' names rarely come in a broadcast. You know, they never get talked about. But when I watch a game, I focus in on that offensive line whenever I can, when that camera's there. Willie Jefferson being extended, is he past his prime?
I thought so until the Grey Cup. I mean, he's still performing. He didn't have as good a season, and he's definitely changed his game now. This last year, he backed off of the pass rushing to a larger degree.
Guy, right? He's more of a containment
guy and really leaned on his knockdown ability. If he saw that he didn't think he was getting close, he was just dropping into a passing lane and trying to knock them down. And with his 34-foot arm span, he can take down just about anything.
Kenny Lawler, the loss of Kenny Lawler, do you think that's a big loss? Did he really deliver for Winnipeg last year, or kind of would he not be missed?
Off and on, he was he was hurt with the thing, but he was fairly consistent. He only had, I think, one bad game that I can remember. I think he is the biggest loss to the team because, I mean, they brought back Dalton Schoen, who's the touchdown machine out of the slot there, but he's basically running 3 or 4 patterns that he's really good at and uses his ability. I don't think it's speed as much as just his ability and space to get open on those ones. So he gets a lot of yardage. But Lawler's more versatile. Yeah. Lawler's got a lot bigger arm span, bigger hands. He'll go downfield and run a lot different routes for you, and he'll do better on those 50-50 balls, just with his length and height and all. So I think, I think he's a significant loss.
I would agree. The re-signing of Chris Streveler, do you really think he's a future CFL quarterback?
No.
Do you think Winnipeg needs to be putting their eggs in a different basket for the heir apparent to Zach Collaros?
Yeah, definitely. They need to, my opinion anyway, have Streveler there, great, but do what Calgary did with Tommy Stevens and what Saskatchewan's going to do with Tommy Stevens this year. He's your third string quarterback. He's your guy that goes in and runs, and he maybe has a 1 or 2 package running plays and stuff like that you can do, but he's not your backup. You've got to bring in something different. And
you're not building a team around him. I don't think.
And they're behind him. They've basically got a couple of Rough Rider retreads because, as far as I know, the only other ones that they have on the roster are Dolegala and Shea Patterson now. So
Shea Patterson.
Not an encouraging successor.
Well, the retirement of Lucky Whitehead, is this a money move for him? Do you think he's done playing? I mean, he looked pretty good last season to me. He didn't look like on the edge of retirement.
He did look a little slower to me last year, and it seems like he's been falling down somewhat not necessarily in his catch ability, but just in the speed and in how much he was getting utilized. So I don't think it's a big deal, him retiring. The fact that BC hadn't re-signed him last year sort of gave the message they thought that he was, better to go a year early than a year late.
Yeah. Now, before you give me Winnipeg's record, that coaching staff seems to keep running out, keep that core together, and they keep running out a winning team every season. Last 6 years, they've gone to the Grey Cup, isn't it? 6 years in a row?
Yep. 5 now.
Or it's 5 years in a row. Yeah, they've got the Grey Cup. Okay, so where are these guys finishing?
I've got them overall at 6. And part of that is because of the turnover in players that they've had, and the fact that their coaching staff isn't quite as intact. I think losing Pierce may hurt them. because it's going to take, I'm drawing a blank on who they promoted as their OC, but it's going to take him a while to get into some place. They've got a little bit of turmoil there. They've also got the fact that, like I said, they've got the fact that it's a Winnipeg Grey Cup and the fan expectation that they were going to load up on all the talent they could get and win it at home.
That never works out.
Yeah, and it seemed like they were counting on those core players to carry them through to it, and they've aged too quickly.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd place them as low as you are, but I do you think they're a playoff team?
Oh, yeah, I think they'll be in the playoffs.
Yeah. Where in their division? Where are they finishing?
Third,
okay. And is there a crossover this year or no?
No, I don't see it. No, I think that the top third of the West is going to be strong enough that it will hold back, although it could be possible. Like I said, there's all four teams in the East are looking somewhat better, at least.
Now, not to argue, but do you remember all the years of Calgary somehow figuring out how to put together a team, and they'd lose players, quarterbacks, you name it, receivers, and they'd continue to run out a winning team and finish first or second, like for a decade. You don't see Winnipeg as that team still on that journey?
I think they might be. I mean, I said after last year, I'm not going to count Winnipeg out until the corpse is decapitated, salted, and burned, because they just keep coming back so much of the time. But based on what I'm seeing right now and the reduction in the talent level that they have in certain areas and some of the turnover that's happening within the coaching staff, and and as well the fact that, as far as I know, their O'Shea hasn't signed an extension beyond this year too, so there'll be some stuff there. I think that they'll play well. I think that they'll be very dangerous at the end of the season again, but I think they'll stumble enough that they won't be leading the West the way they have the last few years.
Okay. I kind of agree. I keep waiting for that. I'm a Bombers fan at heart, and I keep waiting for that final shoe to drop for them.
And no disrespect to them at all. Like you said, it could happen any time, but they could also come back, and they've got some magic there. So they could make a fool of me.
Yeah, yes. So the next team we're going to cover here is the Elks. I'm just seeing what CFL.ca gave them as a score. Winnipeg as a B was the lowest score. So there's a bell curve that should be in here. So the Elks got an A+, and I think so they should. So Jake Seresna, a big signing. Basically, the whole defensive line's been replaced.
Right.
We talked about the three guys leaving Toronto, coming to Edmonton. Tyrell Ford, brother of Trey Ford, they signed him.
Well, yep. Who apparently had some NFL interest and said, no, if you're not giving me guaranteed money, I'll go back home, thanks, which I'm glad to see.
Roy Mechie, defensive back. That's a good addition. I'm just going to see who else they signed of lesser. So
they brought in Beard, did they not? I thought.
Yes, yeah. Definitely, yeah, they brought in Beard. Just looking down some of these other names here. I think those were the big names. Derek Moncrief, they lost him. What do you think?
Yeah.
Is that a big loss?
Not anymore.
No.
Derek's still a good player, but he's not the dominant player he was 3 or 4 years ago. So that's not going to hurt them that much at all. It's going to be a matter of seeing just who they have to back up some of that. They did also, they extended Martez Ivory on the line, which was a big chunk of it, and they extended Javon Leake again, so that was good. They got Niles Morgan in the linebackers, and I'm pretty sure that Anderson is still on his rookie deal. So that, between the offensive and the defensive the front five and the front seven, basically, they are looking like a good, solid team.
Yeah. What about the loss of Eugene Lewis?
That's the part that concerns me a little bit, is who are they going to be throwing the ball to? They've got to find somebody, because right now they got Gittins Jr., and he's about it.
Well, and also Hergy Magella.
I believe he went to Toronto.
Him. Yeah, went to Toronto. They lost him. Yeah. So they're definitely thinned out on the receiving corps for sure.
And Tavon Jones went down to Calgary and that. So I think they just outright released Kyron Moore. So they don't have a lot there. And how will that defensive backfield play? So
So CFL.ca gave him an A+. I don't know if I agree with that, but where are these guys finishing?
There, I've actually dropped them down a spot, or maybe even two, just based on the frankly, the whole Ed Hervey controversy about there are no superstars in the league, because when you're bringing in a team of stars that you're buying like that, there's a lot of egos going on.
Yeah.
And I can see that messing up the locker room a little bit. So I think they're good enough that they're going to make the playoffs. So I'll put them, where did I have them? I'll put them at 5th overall.
5th.
Yeah, one above the Bombers. I think it'll be very close there, but I think
So they're going to finish second in the West. They're going to finish
they're going to be second.
Okay. Yep. And Trey Ford, do you think this is a breakout year for him?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that he's got a coach that wants to play exciting ball, a head coach who wants to play exciting ball and kill him. He's got a offensive coordinator in Masimic who in BC showed that he was willing to use somebody who's got the ability to move and to throw the long ball and whatnot. I think he's going to have an excellent year.
MOP candidate?
Possible if they can get some receivers to put around him. That's still the big question. They've gone from big name receivers the last 4 or 5 years to nobodies this year. They say you should always be able to find a number one out of the NFL drop-offs or the college ranks, but we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, so the next team on our list here would be the BC Lions. A couple of notes here. They locked up Nathan Rourke at quarterback. Are your thoughts on him? Is he going to be the Nathan Rourke of 2 years ago or the Nathan Rourke of last year?
I have no idea. I've seen it go both ways. I've seen especially quarterbacks go down to the NFL and just get broken.
Yeah.
And then I've seen others that go down and spend a year or two on a practice roster and come back better for it. What we saw last year, I honestly don't know. I hope so. I hope he comes back because the league's much better with him at top peak.
Yeah.
I don't have a feel for it. It's too hard to tell.
So they locked up Justin McInnes.
Yeah.
Maybe the best receiver in the CFL.
I think Justin is a good receiver. I think he's got a lot of length and he does very good at going up for the 50-50 balls and that, but the best one, no. I don't put him there.
Okay. I think he's pretty magical, but I'm with you. Maybe not the best.
He's definitely top 5.
Yeah. So they locked up James Butler at running back. Yeah. So they've got a quarterback, a receiver, like a star receiver, star quarterback, star running back.
Yeah.
They look pretty good there. They also added a defensive back, Michael Alway.
Yeah.
So
linebacker for Alway.
Linebacker, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, okay, so that's a pretty good off season, I would say. I'm just seeing if there's any other notable names.
Well, they did re-sign Betts at the D end, who's another one. Well, he didn't look so great coming back out of his NFL tryouts. Will he get back into CFL shape and look good? And Alway's getting up there in age too, and didn't, he had a good year in Calgary last year, but I don't know how much he's got left in him. So there are definitely question marks in this team. That they lost Ciante Evans and they lost Adrian Green, who were both contributors in their defensive backfield. Oh, and they lost Rugamba too. So that's a good chunk of your defensive backfield that goes out the window.
Yes, yeah. And this is a team that started out strong and just faded as the season went on last year. Just something that caught my eye here is they extended their kicker, Sean White. Do you find it odd that as important as kicking is in the CFL, that there's not more movement of kickers in this whole free agent thing?
I don't think that it is, because they're unicorns.
Yeah.
If you get a good kicker, you hold on to him. And White has been a fantastic kicker.
But wouldn't these guys chase money and get themselves not sign and test free agency? Wouldn't you think you'd see more of that?
You might, but I don't know what they're offering them for money.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't know what a kicker gets paid. But if you're a Canadian kicker, especially, I assume you probably make some fairly good money there too. And, and
three down
it's
football. It's a good kicker. I mean, that's the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Back in the day, I remember in Edmonton when they were in their dynasty, when they won 3 or 4 or 5 Grey Cups
5 in a row.
short period of time.
Yeah.
I remember them that their basic game plan was they had a fantastic defense and an offense that could get the ball to the other 35 and kick a field goal, and they won games like that all the time. Don't let the other team score and get some field goals in.
Yeah, Dave Cutler.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are these guys finishing?
These guys I still see at 8th.
8th, and then they're in the West Division?
Yeah, they'll be 4th.
4th. Miss the playoffs?
Yeah, they'll be out of the playoffs. I could be wrong, but it was a poisoned locker room last year when they brought Nathan back, and then
Yes.
all of a sudden there were team Nathan, and
Yeah.
help me out. I'm drawing a
Adams.
blank on
Adams.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Team Nathan, Team Adams, and players didn't seem to want to play hard, and if they, feelings were hurting there, you can't have that in a football team, and they didn't.
Should they have traded Adams?
Almost think
then when they brought work back last season in the middle of the year.
Yeah, probably if they could have. Don't know what they would have gotten for takers. It was just mismanaged all around. And then, as I was saying, on top of that, you got rid of your head coach and your offensive coordinator, but you brought in one guy to replace two of those. He's going to be handling both jobs, which is tougher. And then on top of that, you took your defensive coordinator, who was pretty good, and you didn't fire him, but you demoted him, and you made your special teams coordinator. So you took Ryan Phillips and demoted him, made Benavides, who was your special teams coordinator, your new defensive coordinator. This is in a locker room where apparently people have strong feelings about who they're playing with and for. I think that team is going to continue to stumble and underperform until they they rip it out at the roots as far as GM, coach, everything, put a whole new system in, because it's Pierce. I don't know what he's going to be like as a head coach, but changing a system from a culture from what it was to what it needs to be, that's tough. And so that's why I don't think they're going to do well this year.
Okay. I have a theory about the CFL that when the bookends do well, the whole league does well. From an attendance and fan engagement standpoint, I think BC and Montreal doing well is critical to the CFL. Just an observation over the years. But I'm not a Lions fan, but I do hope they can turn it around and have some success. So the next team on the list here is the Red Blacks.
Yes.
And see what CFL.ca said about them. They are an A. They got an A. So they got Eugene Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
William Stanback, and Matthew Schultz.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on those three additions?
I think Lewis will definitely be a help. Apparently they got him at a little bit of a discount too, because he lives in Montreal, so that saved him some there. Stanback, he doesn't catch so well out of the backfield, so he's just, when his power is working, he's great. But I believe again,
running back.
Yeah, he didn't.
Yeah,
they used him fairly well in BC and got the most they could out of him, and I still don't think that he was definitely the answer for them. So that I'm less excited with. So there was those two, and then who else did we say that they'd picked up?
Matthew Schultz.
It's going to be an interesting quarterback room over there, because they're going to have him and Dustin Crum and
Brown. One
would expect Tyree Adams somewhere in there still, and then Brown. And Brown is really the only solid experience. Like Schultz and Crum have played, but they haven't been consistently inspiring when they play.
Well, Schultz, playing in the shadows of Bo Levi Mitchell is a tall order, right? That's you're a temporary starting quarterback the whole time you're there, right? But Dustin Crum had some success in Ottawa, like flashes of brilliance. Matthew Schultz has had flashes of brilliance, and Drew Brown has had flashes of brilliance. Do you see a full-on battle for QB1 going on there all season?
Not unless the very unusual happens. No, I think Brown is head and shoulders above the other two, and I think that as long as he's healthy, they're going to do okay. They still have the question of the defense. They let some defensive players go a bit. I just didn't re-sign them or let them sign away. And they brought in a bunch of defensive backs and Fields out of Toronto as their defensive coordinator. So to me, will they shore up that defense? Because they certainly score enough points to win games.
Yes, they do.
And I'm leaning at this point towards the fact that they probably will shore it up enough to do it.
Jalen Acklin retired. Not sure if that's a money move. I always say a money move in that he didn't strike me as a player that was kind of at the end of his career. Not sure how old he is, but he seemed pretty making a big contribution last year. Braylon Addison has been extended, so they're keeping him, and he was an important receiver they had there. I'm looking down the list. They did give up a lot of defense, that's for sure.
Yeah, but they But in the defensive backfield, though, is where they were giving it up. If you look, like they brought back Lorenzo Malden and Bryce Carter, who were both fantastic DNs. I think they brought back somebody in one of their nose people, or they've already got him locked up for a bit. So, yeah, so they're looking good along the line. If they get their strong side linebacker who got injured last year, fantastic, played for Toronto the year before. If he's back, their linebacking crew will be just fine. You know, I think that I'm putting them as number 3 for this year.
Second in the East.
Second in the East, yep.
Hosting a playoff
So we got
game.
Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. And like I said, I could see it easily. I didn't take the time to actually figure out win-loss records because I'd have to go through them all and make sure it added up to get a right number. But I could easily see them both coming in somewhere around 9 to 11 wins, and maybe both being at the same record. But I think that Ottawa has the slight edge. Now, if Toronto does what they did last year and brings back another fantastic team out of the ether, we'll change that.
Yeah. You know, I go to a couple of Red Black games every season and occasionally go to an Argos game. The fans in Ottawa, they come out win or lose. They deserve a winner. I mean, they've been a very patient fan base. So
they're definitely. We'll see what it is. I would not be surprised, and I'll say this right now that this is early on, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the season end the way it starts, because it starts on July 5th with Ottawa and Saskatchewan together, and I could see them being in the cup.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's not crazy. So, and oddly enough, our next team is the Riders, and I trust there'll be no bias of any kind here.
No.
So what was their biggest signing? Who was their biggest?
Their biggest signing probably didn't come in the free agency. I think, well, I guess officially free agency, but they're putting an awful lot of expectations on picking up Trayvon Campbell out of the NFL. And he's a Canadian. He started CFL. He was blazing speed, and now he's been, I think, 6 or 7 years down in the NFL, but not getting a lot of playing time, so not getting worn down a lot. They've brought him back, and I'm fairly sure that they're going to have him, I would think, at the short side corner on there. If he works out, that's going to look like a fantastic move. If he's a broken ex-NFLer that can't play it, then they're going to be in trouble because they didn't really get too much around there. And then the other one that goes with that is Shane, I think it's Shane, isn't it? Shane Ray on the defensive end, who they picked out of the NFL. He's been brilliant when he plays, but he's hurt a lot. So are those good signings? Hard to say.
Well, and they had a great team last year, so they didn't really need to really do a whole lot to. They just had to keep it together, right?
Exactly. And they did bring in, I think bringing in Jake Mayer, which was a trade and then an extension, was a great move, because we'll find out what he is as a quarterback if he gets to play this year at all, when he's actually got a good line in front of him and working with a coordinator that he knows. He showed some promise beforehand, but also bringing in Stevens as that short yardage guy. Saskatchewan hasn't been able to make short yardage plays for probably as long as I've been watching.
Yeah.
So those, and then getting the big thing to me of that package with Tommy Stevens was also getting Sean McEwen, the center, who's leading him on those, because that kind of timing is critical in that situation. And
yes, that's true. Now, do you think Trevor Harris is at the end of his career? Like, he's got one more season left?
I think he's got at least one more season left.
Yeah.
Whether he has more than that, I don't know. He's really not, other than the injuries, which you could say have been semi-flukes both years. He's not slowing down yet. But I also know that you get to certain points in your life where suddenly 1 year can make a huge difference. So we'll see. I'm hoping he's got a good year left in him. People that know him say maybe 2 or 3. But
now, if he falters, he doesn't perform, is there a quarterback controversy in Saskatchewan?
I can't see it. I can't see him playing badly enough to get benched long term. If he has a bad game, yeah. But I think he is still, at this point, he is still a much better quarterback than Jake Mayer is. So I don't see the controversy coming into that so much. Jake
Mayer did unseat Bo Levi Mitchell. I mean, it's a coach's call, right? It maybe wasn't as much about Bo Levi Mitchell. It was about Jake Mayer. But
yeah, well, don't forget that was also when Bo Levi Mitchell was throwing with half of the ligaments in his shoulder gone. So he was an easier person to knock off the perch than he is back to today.
Yeah. So where are these guys finishing? They had I thought they had an okay season last year.
An okay season. They were one win gust away from first place.
Yeah.
I see them first overall in the league this year.
Wow.
And this is where I think people are going to say, "Oh, Saskatchewan homer," but when my rationale behind it is I do think Montreal will probably be a better team. But like I said, it's going to be a dogfight in that Eastern Division, whereas we've already covered, Winnipeg has not brought back some of the people that it looks like they need, and they've got a coaching change, at least at the offensive coordinator, which is questionable. You've got Edmonton, who have brought in a lot of great players, but we don't know if they're going to gel, and again, there seems to be some controversy in the front office. We talked about BC and how they're going to, how they may not have cleaned the rot out of their front office too. And then we'll talk about Calgary when we get there, but they're going through a bunch of the same things. So to me, Saskatchewan should, all things considered, do very well in the league this year and get that first spot because they're playing teams that are not at their prime as far as, what you're looking at going into a season goes.
So what would have to go wrong for them not to finish first?
For them not to finish first, well, a lot of things could go wrong or right. Edmonton could just gel. Because if that team does gel, then there's nobody else in the league that's going to stick with them very much, I don't think. So they could gel. You could lose, I think maybe you could lose Harris, and that would knock you down some. I don't know if Mayor's ready to get to it. And then the other thing is if they've got pretty good backup, but if they lose their one of their two true linebackers, either the Mac with Jameer Thurman, or I think they're going to be playing Audrey Avery out at the out at the will linebacker. If you lose either, you've got Gary Johnson, who's anyway, Canadian, who's good. So Harris is probably their biggest threat to them. The other thing which could, I think, really mess them up, especially if they're moving their secondary around a lot, is if they were to lose Roland Milligan, because he was very much what tied that all together last year.
We got two. So
okay.
Next is the Stamps.
Yeah.
Just looking at who some of their signings were. So CFL.ca gave them an A. They've signed Dominic Rhymes. Is that you think an important addition?
He could be. Again, a player
Adams is their quarterback, right? Adams is the quarterback in Calgary?
Yeah, exactly. And he's played with Rhymes before, but he's one of those guys that he's had a couple of good seasons, but then he tends to fade into the background a bit again. So I don't know that he's certainly not a number one. And that's unless they have Jalen Philpott step up and become a number one receiver for them, which I don't know that he's really designed for. Maybe he is, because it's kind of what they do with his brother in Montreal. Yeah. But that's, to me, their biggest thing here. They've brought in some people, but I don't really see a fantastic receiving core for Adams to throw to.
Okay, and is he a solution in Calgary? Do you think he's a good fit there?
He could be. It'll all depend how much they can protect him, because he is, my opinion of Adams is he's a fantastic quarterback. He does really well. If he gets to start scrambling around and making people miss, his psyche gets on and he's just hitting long balls and he's doing all kinds of stuff. On the other hand, if you get him scrambling like that and you can hit him once or twice in the first quarter, early second quarter, it changes that whole confidence level around. And so it's not just Adams. Do they have the line in front of them? I don't know if they do this year. I think there's still a lot of work to do in Calgary.
Derek Moncrief?
Yeah. See, again, he's a good veteran player, but if you're going to play, where are you going to play him? You can play him at halfback, but his loss of speed hurts him there. He might still be better up as a strong side linebacker, and in fact, what we saw in Saskatchewan 2 years ago was when they were playing back and forth with him. He was still a good inside or strong side linebacker, where his quickness could help him at the line and he could still cover some, but his coverage skills have dropped off considerably.
Okay, so this is the team that had an awful season last year. Where are they finishing?
They're back there again, I'm afraid. They get 9 from me. I don't see. The other thing is, again, their coaching thing. They got rid of their 2 best coaches, with Killam and, defensive coordinator, Brent Monson. So they got rid of those 2. They've brought in people that don't have experience, or they've promoted from within. So it seems like it's a real money kind of thing going on there too. And all the stuff that we've heard about the ex-Calgary players saying, don't go there. It's not a good team. They're talking about, they're going to have better food next year because of this NFL player or CFL Players Association report. But I don't think it's fixed there. I just don't see them being ready yet. I think if they're going to fix it and they're going to keep Dave Dickinson around, they need to get a GM in to work with him.
I would agree. It's a lot for one guy. So the last team on our list here is the Hamilton Tiger Cats. The biggest addition of the off season was Lawler, Kenny the King Lawler. They also have David Beard. They lost James Butler at running back. I don't see any other really big names there. Oh.
And yeah, they brought in a couple, like they brought in Haba from Winnipeg. They brought in Johnny Augustine from Winnipeg. So their question again is, they're a team that showed last year that as long as Bo's healthy, they can score points. But will their defense do it? And I haven't seen anything in the defensive ads that really gets me excited that their defense is going to be a lot better. They do have Monson now, who's a good coordinator, and that
who's backing up Bo? Who's the backup?
It'll be Tyler. What's Tyler's last name? Everybody wanted him in all last year. Drawing a blank.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully Bo stays healthy.
Yeah, hopefully he will. Yeah, but this other kid, Tyler, he did start 2 years ago of several games, and he does look okay. So we'll see. And I mean, we knew that Butler wasn't coming back because he was a healthy scratch through most of the last half of the season. But they brought back Andre Milanovic-Litre, who was their short yardage guy, so he'll be a help with them. They did get rid of a lot of O linemen and D linemen. Menard retired, I think. I don't know if Evan Johnson retired. They just didn't re-sign him They didn't re-sign Usher on the D-line. Where else did I see? Joel Figueroa didn't get re-signed by them. Yeah, Beard went off to Edmonton for theirs. So they're questionable.
Where are they
finishing in, where did I put everybody else? So they're in 7th. So they're going to be the last in the East and miss the playoffs.
Again.
So it'll be the same basic 3 teams out of the playoffs as this year. I think Calgary, BC, and Hamilton.
What player do you predict is going to have the biggest impact on their team?
Let's see. From this off season. Oh, that's when you threw me. Let's see. I'm trying to think, because it's easy to say someone like a Lewis, because with him teaming him up with Brown in Ottawa could be fairly phenomenal. The defensive end, Joshua Archibald, went from BC to Montreal. He was a rotation player for BC. I liked him. I think he's ready. I believe, he's a Canadian too, and I think he's ready to make the jump. I think you're going to see him. You're going to hear his name a lot in Montreal this year. So that he's probably my sort of maybe the long shot for biggest impact, but I really think you're going to get some of that.
Okay, I like that. That's good, yeah. Okay, well, this has been a recap of the off-season activity within the CFL.
We've got the draft coming up on the 29th, and then rookie camp starts the following, I believe, Wednesday after that, so the first week of May. They do that until the next Monday, and then they go to main camp. So that's, I think, I'd have to pull up the schedule here, but I think that they were the first game in the preseason is Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. They play each other twice in the preseason, which is just stupid. But they play in the first weekend, and then the next 2 weekends there's 4 sets of games, and then on June 5th, which is a Thursday, it starts for real with Ottawa at Saskatchewan.
Okay, so probably our next episode is going to be during training camp.
I would think so, unless we decide we're going to try something more. This is just to give the folks a little bit of a sneak peek as we build this new show up, to give them some idea of what's going on. If we think about something good to do, maybe if there's anything to do after the, if the draft is anything worth talking about, maybe we'll give it a discussion and put something up. But otherwise, I would think that if nothing else, we'll want to cover that first week of training camp after the first Saskatchewan-Winnipeg game. And I'm hoping they put those all up on CFL Plus on the streaming again.
Okay, so, well, everybody, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Get the hell off my lawn. Bye, Trevor. See you next time.